if you're serious about building, like all the companies that are doing that we've worked with and that we are currently working with that are doing 100,000 plus, right? They're multi-channel, all of them.
Mm.
On top of that, when they started their businesses, they invested into it like they were investing in a brick and mortar, right? If you opened a store in a Main Street, America, you're
Mhm.
probably spending a couple of $100,000 before the doors open, right? It's just the way it is. You
Absolutely.
fitting out the shop, you're buying the stock, you're hiring the staff, you're doing all the stuff. The doors open, you're already 200,000 in the red before you've sold your first thing. The first year, you're just trying to get back to zero, and it might take a year and a half if you're doing well,
Mhm.
right?
Welcome to Built Online. I'm Cody McGuffie, and this podcast is all about one thing: building the business of your dreams. Selling art, teaching classes, starting a blog, launching a brand, whatever your passion is, we show you how to turn it into real income. I created EverBee to help anyone with a dream start and scale a business. And we now serve over 800,000 creators all across the globe. On this show, we bring on real entrepreneurs who've done it. They share their secrets, they share their failures, the exact steps that you can take to get started. What if you can get one golden nugget out of today's episode, and it's the breakthrough that takes you from just dreaming to actually living a life on your terms? At EverBee, we believe that every human is a creator, and every creator should own a business. Andy, we made it. How are you doing?
Very good. How are you?
Very great. We were chatting a little bit before this. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. We're really excited to chat it up.
yeah, I'm excited too. It's good to see you, Cody.
Nice to see you too. We have exciting conversation I think ahead of us, and we chatted a little bit before, but I want to set the stage for anyone listening to this. And I'll do my little snippet here, but I want you to fill in the gaps for me. But I'm going to take it from your LinkedIn. You're leading a band of e-commerce superheroes
Yeah,
with the only goal of taking your clients, their products, and their sales to a new level of amazing.
yeah,
And it seems like you focus on primarily a couple different things, but primarily e-commerce brands for e-commerce creators, e-commerce business owners. And you also do like brick and mortar, like you mentioned gymnastics gyms, and you basically help them grow their business also.
yeah,
Two kind of different worlds, and which makes you unique because you get to see both sides of both worlds, and there's a lot of crossover.
yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about all that. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Did I miss anything there? What else would you say to that?
Um, yeah, I would say that having understanding of different disciplines from traffic flow in real life to traffic flow online, um, being more of a focus of actually being an advertising agency that is about marketing, not just click throughs, right? How do you get
Mm,
click throughs? How to speak to people, what you're trying to accomplish. When we talk about full service, we are full service in a very, I think, holistic way, not just full service like, hey, we do Facebook and Google and blah, blah, blah. Full service from looking at you, Cody, as a person and going, okay, why did you get into this business? What do you want to accomplish?
mm,
And how do we use all the tools that are online to accomplish what your personal goals are? And we do work through that right from the point of meeting you, which makes us
beautiful.
very different. We understand all the different parts of this with the hundreds of businesses that we do work with.
Beautiful. And for anyone here, just to set the stage, um, Andy he's the leader of Ashworth Strategy, which is mostly sounds like your e-commerce type of agency. You guys focus on that branch, I guess you could say, focuses on e-commerce. And then you're also the owner of Creatively Disruptive, which is more the brick and mortar side of things. But it's all
Correct.
kind of sounds like it all heads up to you at the end
Correct.
of the day.
Yep. Yep. We've got a management team that kind of runs both sides. So the philosophy is the same. There's not like a very different philosophy between the two. And then we have the implementers and the deliverables done by specialists. So specialists on e-commerce, specialists on lead gen, specialists on, you know, I guess real-time traffic flow, meaning people who
Mm,
drive up to the front store and walk through the door. So uh, we specialize, but there's also, in our opinion, or in my opinion, and my business partner's opinion, there's a definite similarity between the wants and the needs of the e-commerce owner and this brick and mortar guy, right? They all want
Absolutely.
the same thing. They want to send their kids to college. They want to go on nice vacations. They want to buy that nice house. They want to do all those things, which sometimes gets lost. And in the mix of I want to be a millionaire. Sometimes you don't need to be a millionaire to get all the things that you want. Sometimes you might need more, right? So
Mm,
understanding what you actually want to accomplish is actually what we focus on.
I love
And
that.
then the numbers then fill in themselves, right? So, Cody, if you come to me and you say, Andy, I have a dream of having a vacation home on Coronado Island in San Diego. They start out for a decent house at, $4 million. I also want to stay living where I am, but I want to renovate the house. I also want to be able to go on trips and blah, blah, blah. I need to be earning $500,000 a year profit.
Hmm.
Um, that's where we start from, right?
Beautiful.
Because revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. Profit is where you get the payoff. Revenue is whatever. You see ads, I see stuff all the time. It just makes me smirk. We'll triple your sales we'll get you to 4 million. $4 million revenue. Okay, that's great. Revenue is great, but I know for a fact through my personal experience, the revenue means nothing without the P word.
Yep.
And we kind of like start from what is it that Cody wants? Because what Cody wants equals the profit.
Mm,
And we back it all the way through, and actually the numbers follow all the way through to click through rate.
interesting. I want to use a use case that I like to use on the podcast occasionally, and it's a woman. She's a business owner. Her name is Rachel, and Rachel has a brand already, and she focuses on the hair tools industry. So her flagship product is, let's call it a hair dryer. And it's a nice hair dryer. It's unique. It's different. She's done a great job of creating that, and she's an entrepreneur. Sales, she has some sales. So she has a brand. She has some sales through her own website. When I say some, maybe you could ask me more, but maybe let's call it like she's moving like small amounts. Like she's let's call it $3,000 a month in revenue.
Okay.
Okay, so she has some traction. She has some customers. They seem to be happy, but like she doesn't know what to do. How does she even grow this thing? Um, can we use her as kind of like the use case and almost
Sure.
like play with
Sure.
that?
Sure.
I'll also say that Rachel is she's not super technical. She's not super technical. She is not. She's entrepreneurial in a sense that she has the mindset of entrepreneur, but she doesn't have the specialty of Facebook ads. You know, the skill set. She doesn't have the specialty of like blogging or creative content or organic content. She doesn't have those any types of deep specialties. She's just kind of like the creator of the product. And so she doesn't know which levers to pull when it comes to kind of 10xing her growth, her profit, her revenue, all this stuff. Um, what would you ask Rachel? What would you advise Rachel? We can start there.
Okay. So, I mean, one of the first things that we would start with, and it's going to sound repetitive, is we're going to start with what does she want to accomplish?
And then maybe I'll answer for her.
Okay. So if you say 10x, so you're saying you need to earn $30,000 a month. Is that correct? And then we'd go into why 30? Why not 50?
Mm,
10xing sounds like a thing that you hear on Instagram a lot. Hey,
mm,
10x, it's a sales pitch. We'll give you
mm,
your money back and a pizza if we don't 10x your business within X number of days, right? So,
mm,
you know, and people get caught up in that stuff. Again, we're gonna come back to Rachel. What is it that's going to move the needle for you to be where you need to be? The next question
I
is,
would say I want financial. If I'm Rachel,
yep,
I want financial freedom, location freedom, time freedom. I want a business I'm proud of. I want a brand that I'm proud of. I want to prove myself right and also the other people that doubted me wrong.
right,
This is the stuff that I care about.
right,
What does that number look like to me? I mean, freedom number probably to me. I live in the U.S. I'm Rachel. I live in the U.S. It probably means $10,000 to $20,000 a month in monthly profit without sucking the business dry. That's important. I don't want to like make sure I'm not draining the business just to live my lifestyle. It's
right,
important for me. And I know I can do it. I just don't know how to do it.
Yep.
And I
So,
hear about all these levers, Amazon, and then you have like Facebook ads and Google ads and influencer marketing. Uh, where do I go? And I
right.
don't have any specialties in any of those things. That's my mindset as Rachel.
And that's a good number. So 20,000 profit. So I would be suggesting that the goal should be $100,000, right? Because you're not going to get $20,000 out of 30, right? And to be honest, to get to 30 to 100, it's just a little bit more time. But they're all, if you've got a product that people want, we live in the United States. The United States is a bottomless pit market as far as any regular person is concerned, right? So any regular business owner that's happy to run a business that does $10 million of sales a year, pretty much think of an unlimited market. It comes down to whether or not people want your product and want to purchase it, and whether or not people are attracted to the message that you put out there. And
Mm,
you know, are you in a professional kind of I guess effective manner operating your online business, so running your ads, doing all the things that you need to do? That's not the magic sauce, right? If I'm honest with you, there's a lot of people that can run really good Facebook ads. There's a lot of people that can run really good Google ads. There's a lot of people that can run really good email marketing campaigns, etc. That's not the hard part. The platforms run well now, and if you understand what their roles are, you can actually get a good result from it. What's key is, one, you knowing what you want to do, having the internal fortitude to get through the difficulties, because there is an element of trying to figure out what the market wants, because you've got to key on what the market wants. You can't force the market to buy your product in the way that
hmm.
you want them to buy it.
So that's why you asked, or that's why we mentioned like the let's say the flagship product, the hair dryer in this case, does have sales, and that to you is very important because you're like, okay, if 3 people buy it, that means 30 people will buy it.
Right, right.
Is,
So
is that kind of, yeah? If 30
yeah,
people buy it, then 3,000 people can buy it, so
right.
on.
Now, we're a little bit unique. We have a ability to do. We have a process called, we're actually changing it to rapid results testing, but we used to call it viability testing. So a new customer would come in, and they've never got any sale from their business, and we would go through a viability test process where we actually run a whole bunch of ads, testing a whole bunch of ways of pitching a product to see if the market wants the product. And it's super, super effective, and it comes back with a whole bunch of basically a whole plan of, this is how to launch your product. The cool thing about that process, and the reason why we changed it to um, rapid result testing, is that it works for any size company. So if a company feels like they've stalled out, we actually go through that process, and that's actually part of kind of like the onboarding process. If I'm honest with you, we go through that to go, okay, what is it that the market's stimulated by when it comes to your product? Right, the words,
Mm.
the headlines, the imagery, the whole 9 yards. We
Is
do
that
that.
mostly through Facebook for you guys, that
Yes,
process?
that's almost entirely done through Facebook.
Makes
Well,
sense.
it is entirely done through Facebook and Instagram, because it gives us really good,
Yeah.
results of click through rates and so forth. So that would be something that we would still do for Rachel. And then we'd go, okay, so we need to get to 20,000, 100,000. We're working with a 20% profit margin that we're trying to get to. The next question that's really, really critical, that a lot of people who get into ecom don't really understand,
Can I pause you for a
is,
second?
yes,
When you
yep,
say 20,000, I want to make sure that we have this stuff ironed out at the beginning.
yep,
When you said, I said 20,000 in profit is the goal, and then
yep,
you mentioned 100,000. Is that 100,000 in revenue is the goal,
yep,
or 100,000 in, okay, that's what you said, 100,000 in revenue,
yep,
and then so we could pull 20 to live my life.
yep, yep.
Understood.
Because you
Okay,
said that you don't want to drain your company. 20,000, 20% profit on an online business is a number that I think is reasonable for a somewhat mature company. When
okay,
you're growing, you might have a lot less than that, because you're constantly feeding the monster to grow, and grow and grow. And we have without kind of starting to fall apart and be fractional of this conversation, so it feels like it's a puzzle that you've got to try, that the listeners
sure.
got to try to put together. What we see when it comes to a growth standpoint is, um, at the beginning, when somebody has a low dollar amount, their return on their money, they've got to understand that it's going to be very low, right? And it's not low just because the ads aren't working, and that's what we see a lot. We see a lot of people who are doing maybe between $5,000 to $15,000 a month in revenue. They end up coming to us, and they've gone through 7 or 8 agencies. And they're like,
Mm.
oh, the agency could only ever get 1.1, ROAS or whatever. And that's a mistake in itself when they look at Facebook and go, I got a 1.1 ROAS. That's a modeled number. That's not 100% accurate. You don't know if it's slightly
Mm.
higher or slightly lower. You don't really know. We always go with the MER, so media efficiency rate, which is if I spend $1 on my marketing and I get $2 back, I've got a 2 MER. It's pretty easy because you just look at how
Mm.
much money you made on Shopify and how much money came out of your bank, and that is the rating that we look at, and we include
And you're
our.
just making the assumption that all of the sales came through the Facebook in this case, right?
Well, it's all of your efforts, right? So
Gotcha.
so
So you're focusing on one channel, like you're Rachel. You're having Rachel focus on one marketing channel, which
well, I
is Meta
wouldn't
in
do
this
that
case.
actually. I wouldn't.
Oh, I
I
see.
wouldn't do that. So if you think about, I mean, you can do that if you've got real lack of budget. But to get back to what I was going to
Sure.
say, if you're serious about building, like all the companies that are doing that we've worked with and that we are currently working with that are doing 100,000 plus, right? They're multi-channel, all of them.
Mm.
On top of that, when they started their businesses, they invested into it like they were investing in a brick and mortar, right? If you opened a store in a main street America, you're
Mm-hmm.
probably spending a couple of $100,000 before the doors open, right? It's just the way it is. You
Absolutely.
fitting out the shop, you're buying the stock, you're hiring the staff, you're doing all the stuff. The doors open, you're already 200,000 in the red before you've sold your first thing. The first year, you're just trying to get back to zero, and it might take a year and a half if you're doing well,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of ecom brands don't take themselves seriously. They think it's a short run to riches. It is a run to riches. You can make a lot of money from it, but it's like any other business. You need to invest in it. It's really hard
Mm-hmm.
for an agency like ourselves to come to a person like Rachel, who might have an email list because hey, she's selling 3,000, maybe her hair dryer is 50
$100.
bucks, $50
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
$100. I mean, my wife's hair dryer is like $200. So who
Okay.
knows? But let's say $100 because it's easy math.
Mm-hmm.
So she's selling 30 hair dryers a month. Maybe she's
Mm-hmm.
been doing that for 3 or 4 months, right? She's
Mm-hmm.
got 120 sales, right? So she has 120 emails. So that's her email list.
Mm-hmm.
Also, because it's a hairdryer, it's not a consumable, right? Hopefully, because hopefully they're good hairdryers and might
Mm-hmm.
last a few years. It's almost a one and done unless you're selling other accessories. So, those are all things that you need to take into account when you're starting up your business. Now, that $100 hair dryer, which is important that it's probably $100 hair dryer, not 50, is probably going to cost you $30 to sell,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which eats up 30% of that 80% that we're trying to work within. So you got 20% profit, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you're starting out, we have a rule that when we start out with you, we tell our clients, look, expect there to be low MER, right? You could be spending $1 to get 80 cents, right? As you're building up your online presence, right? Then we
Mm-hmm.
get up you to a one, then we get up you to 1.5, then we get up you to two, and our goal is to try to get you into the two, between 2 and 3 as quickly as we can, right? Because that
Mm-hmm.
typically 2s and 3s tends to be where break even is and profit starts to happen, right?
I
Between
see.
2 and 3. When your MER starts creeping up to 3 or more, we're going to come back to you and say, Rachel, you know, you need to spend more. You give us more advertising budget, right? So that's going to drop
Mm-hmm.
the MER, right? We're going to test more. We're going to try to expand the market. We're going to try to get more because we're going to try to scale. We're going to try to get more sales. We're going to really try to push it. If it gets over 3, it's showing us that there's money that we could be using to
Mm-hmm.
grow. If it gets down to 2, it's kind of like, okay, are we on top of everything? So there's this happy medium of saying between that 2 and 3 while we're scaling. When a client gets to a point where they don't want to grow anymore, that they're happy with the number of sales that they have, which is almost never in e-commerce. But
Sure.
let's say Rachel's like, oh, I'm really happy. I've got to 100,000. I don't want to sell anymore. guarantee you Rachel's going to say, let's get to 200 grand because I'd like to have
Mm-hmm.
$40,000 profit. But let's say she's one of the weird people that wants to
Yeah,
stay where
yeah,
they're at. Then we might then we would work at trying to get the MER as high as possible, right?
sure.
Right,
But
with the
three's
number
that
of sales
nice,
that she's
beautiful part.
done. Right.
Okay.
Um,
When does Rachel know to hire an agency or not? I think I remember this when I was starting my brands early on. I'm like, I need to just do all this myself because I want to learn it, one, and then two, I probably don't have the finances to afford an agency anyway. Third, the agency is probably going to like not work out anyway because you hear a bunch of horror stories always. So
yeah.
like, how does Rachel know when she's like, okay, it's
So
time for me to hire an agency?
depends how serious you're going to be about it, and it depends on what your skill set is. So,
Okay,
Cody, let's say you get maybe you're dating Rachel or you're married to Rachel,
sure.
and you have a real great you're an amazing e-commerce marketer. Then maybe
Okay.
you could do it in house and you can have your boyfriend or your husband do it for you. Or if Rachel was an amazing e-commerce marketer, then maybe you want to try it yourself. And I do know some brands that get to some significant numbers because first and foremost, they're not hairdryer people. They're actually marketers and they've just found a hairdryer to sell because that's the vehicle that they're
Hmm.
using to make money. That can work. The majority of our clients aren't. The majority of our clients are, let's say Rachel, if they came to us, it wouldn't be uncommon that Rachel was a hairdresser.
Yeah,
And
exactly what she is. She's Rachel in this case is a hairdresser,
right,
and she's not a marketer.
right.
She's passionate about hair and hair tools
Yeah.
and
And
talking about hair and
she's helped design and create an amazing
absolutely.
hairdryer, right? So in that case, if she's committed and serious about her ecom business, she has to hire an agency or hire people into her company, which is orders of magnitude more expensive. So,
Hmm.
my Google Ads person is a bit of a savant, if I'm honest. She is one of the better Google Ads people that I've ever seen. And if I'm honest with you, we acquired Ashworth Strategy, which was a Creatively Disruptive acquired Ashworth Strategy, which was an e-commerce brand, an e-commerce marketing agency. And one of the reasons why we acquired it was because this person worked for
Wow.
Ashworth Strategy, because it's like it's hard to find good people. Sometimes you got
Hmm.
to buy a company to get them. So we got, you're not going to get that level of Google marketer for less than 9 grand a month, 8 grand a month, right?
Hmm.
You're not going.
But you could hire an agency for how much you think in your
I mean,
experience?
for us, our average client when they start with us is probably paying around about 5K. Um,
Okay.
but a lot of our clients are in the tens and 15s because we have a share program. So the base amount that you pay us is around give or take $1,000 depending on what we're doing, 5K. But the where the payoff is for us is, and we're I don't really make a lot of money at 5K if I'm honest with you, but
Yeah.
getting that client up to paying us, let's say 15 grand or 20 grand, because we're getting a commission share. So we take a share of the sales as our commission. So we've got skin in
Sure.
the game.
So when they win, you win, and it continues
So you want to
to
so
work
you
that
want to
way.
find agencies that speak like that.
Okay.
My biggest thing that I'd say to Rachel, if she wasn't looking to work with me, but maybe she hired me as a consultant to help her find an agency, would be to really thoroughly talk to the agency. One, to get a sense as to, are they interested in me? Or that, if you talk to an agency and all they do is talk about themselves, talk about what they've done, and then it just feels uncomfortable, just walk away.
Mm,
Talk about what their planning is, right? Ask them, do I get to see a plan? Do I get to see a strategy? Do I get to see what you're planning to do with my thousands,
mm,
tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars of ad spend? If they don't say, yeah, we're going to put a plan together, blah, 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 like we even guarantee our plan. We say, hey, Rachel, you've just met us. We're going one of the first things we're going to do is build out a 40-page document to show us what we're going to do with every single part of what you've got going on, what we're going to
mm,
improve, what we're going to change, what our strategy is, the whole 9 yards. And then
hmm.
if you don't like that, if you think our strategy sucks, we're actually going to give you all your money back and say thank you very much. Sorry, we wasted your time. We've never given money back in 10 years of doing business, but we are so certain that it's the best way to go. So Rachel, who's a hairdresser who doesn't really know what she's doing, ultimately has a plan to hold us accountable to, right? So, and our plan is all about getting Rachel to $100,000 with a 20% profit. And we'll break it down and show her step by step how that process is going to go, and what, more importantly, what her investment needs to be in it. Because her
When do you think
investment
Rachel
is real.
should be able to expect some sort of, how much should she have in the bank in order to, in the business bank, let's call it business bank, how much should she have in the business bank to be able to make a decision like this?
Yeah.
For example, $5,000 a month is just the beginning, right? And then plus she has ad spend as well, right on top of this. So she has to be prepared to spend, what's the minimum ad spend? 5 grand a month, 3,000 a
Yeah.
month
I would say a
minimum.
minimum would be 5 grand. Minimum.
Cool. So now she's
Minimum.
spending 10. She has to spend $10,000
Yeah.
cash every month in
Minimum.
order to just play this game.
Yeah.
Um, how much would you recommend Rachel have in the bank before she makes a decision to like make sure she feels like, hey, we're going to be in business for the next 6 months, right? So she doesn't run herself out of business just by being too ambitious and
Right.
just doing what everyone says
What
that
I
she should
what I
do.
wouldn't do is, if somebody has 10K in the bank, to try it, because you're going to blow
Okay.
through that money in the first month, or maybe by the second or third month you'll blow through all of that money, right?
Okay.
Um, I mean, you're probably looking at 100K. And that I hesitate to say that, because I know that some people say, well, I can't, I'm not going to
I'll
do it.
never have
I'm
100,000.
never going to
Exactly.
do that.
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to hire agency, or I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just try to do it myself, or blah, 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 blah. It's all about speed. I mean, if you've got all the time in the world, if you got all the skills in the world when it comes to digital marketing, you could probably do it for less, right? So one, you save the agency fee, right? So that puts a little bit more money in your bank account. And you might be able to, if you've got a corporate job, you might be able to feed this monster
Sure.
for a long time from other sources, right? Um, there's a real correlation between ad spend and speed, right? So a lot of times people will say to me, I need to get to this number in 6 months' time or whatever. Well, okay, what's the budget that you're going to give us to do that? Well, I'm going to give you 5K. And I'm basically like, well, we'll try, but I can't, you can't, if you're bringing out your 50, $30,000 of savings, and that's all you've got, and we're going to
Mm-hmm.
blow through it, there's a good chance that we're going to blow through it, and you're not going to be happy at the end of 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the more money we have, the more testing we can do. And at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of a program, if you came to me, Rachel, and you're already doing 100K and there's already a lot of stuff, then it's just optimizing. It's just making sure, okay, let's clean up anything. Let's look at the website. Let's make sure there's anything that's not quite running, so we can maybe bump you up, a half a MER, which means that could be a lot of profit for you. And then we use that money to start scaling and start, doing some other things. And the testing's not as painful. When you're at
Mm-hmm.
5K, when you're making 3K, and we're talking to you, we need to do testing, and the testing budget might be 3K. And testing
Mm-hmm.
means all of it might be wasted, because we're trying different things to see what the market really is excited
Mm-hmm.
about. That's why we always recommend people with a low that's just started out to do the viability testing.
So if I'm Rachel and I'm like, okay, hey, I want to work with you, Andy, um, and then I'm obviously going to ask like, hey, how long do you think it should take for it to work?
Yeah,
Right? I'm going to use that language probably,
sure, yeah,
and then I'll probably say, in the back of my head, what I'm really saying is like, I only have $10,000 in the bank account, so is this going to pay off before I run out of money?
and I'd
And
say
the answer probably is say
I would
no.
say
Like,
we would say no. Now, what we would do is then hold our hand, because we have a lot of capabilities. We have a little bit more capabilities than most agencies. Most agencies, if I'm honest, and the reason why people fall afoul is that it's an agency with some guy who knows something about Facebook and maybe a little bit
sure.
about Google, and he has some contractor that he brings in occasionally, and that's his agency. And he goes online. He's good at building websites, and he makes it sound really good.
Mm-hmm.
People are sucked into those kind of agencies all the time, or the 5-man band agencies, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
they don't have a lot of skill set, they don't have a lot of voices and a lot of thoughts and a lot of experience. And there's nothing wrong with those guys because sometimes they're
Sure.
really good people, but they're limited in their capacity. So what we would do if in that case is say, look, Rachel, you're not in a place that you can really do this right. There's a high risk that you're just going to waste your 10 grand. Could we do it? Is there a chance that suddenly everybody just loves it and it suddenly takes off in a way? Yes, but that target is super small and there's a high likelihood that you're gonna miss it. What
Yeah.
we do with those kind of clients all the time, because we don't just say adios, see you later, because
Hmm.
she's still at the beginning of her journey,
Sure.
is we actually do a done with you process. So what you would do, like let's say you're Rachel, what we would do is meet with you every week, and you'd sit down with one of our top
Mm.
platform specialists, and that specialist would actually work with you and showing you how to build the campaign and run the campaign
Super cool.
yourself. And that's significantly less fee than the 5,000 minimum plus commissions that we charge as an agency. But that could give Rachel enough know-how and enough knowledge to start pushing up to that 10K, to that
Hmm.
12K, to that 15K. And if she's still cutting hair, right, on the side to pay her bills, and she's making 15K from her hair dry sales, and maybe that's showing her a 5 or 6K profit, all of a sudden we've been able to push her to the point where she can actually have some runway, which is super important, because I would easily say that you need to give it at least a year of
Okay.
possibly not doing great and not making a big profit, before you really judge what's going on. And
Mm.
and that done for you option for somebody who's kind of starting out is proving to be really powerful, because you end up spending an hour, once a month or a couple of times a month with my Google specialist, who's amazing at
Wow.
Google, and we'll say, hey, do this, do this. Yep, here's why we do this. Here why we do this, and start upping Rachel's game. Now, two things happen. One, Rachel can start maybe getting some sales, and get to the
Sure.
point where it's more sustainable, right? But two, Rachel can understand what's going on. So let's say she ultimately doesn't come with us as an agency. Our hope is to graduate those clients into being,
Absolutely. Hmm.
because what ends up happening is the client goes, "This is so much work. I don't want to do it. There's too much stuff to keep in the odd. We'll
Absolutely.
just hire you guys." But the reality is, the worst case scenario for Rachel is that she's got so much knowledge that she can make a really good decision when she's hiring an agency. She's much more educated and not going to be given a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo, which is super, super important. Because as you said rightly, if there's 10 agencies, beware of 8 of them. There's probably 2 of them that are really going to be great. And you want to interview 10 before you make any decision, and you want to know if they have your best interest at heart, right?
Mm.
If they
Amazing.
All the good agencies will have some kind of guarantee. A lot of the good agencies will have a guarantee along the lines of, we're going to show you exactly what we do, and if it doesn't make sense to you, then there's no cost to you,
Mm.
right?
Andy, where can people find you, follow you, connect with you, get in touch with Creatively Disrupted or Ashworth?
Yeah,
Where
so
can people go from here?
So go to Ashworth Strategy, not strategies. So ashworthstrategy.com. That is our ecom brand, and you'll be able to see us and see the team, and be able to reach out to us through there. You can go to Ashworth Strategy on Instagram. If you want to reach us, if you've got maybe a bit of a brick and mortar, and we do have some ecom clients that are like boutiques, and then they go online. If you're a brick and mortar thinking about doing e-commerce, you can still reach out through Ashworth Strategy, or you can reach out through creativelydisruptive.com, and reach out to us too. And obviously Instagram, creativelydisruptive.com. We are on all the other platforms, but that's where most of the meat and potato is going on when it comes to communication.
Beautiful. And we will link to those things, all Andy's links below in the show notes or description too, if you're watching or listening. Andy, thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. Really
Thanks, Cody.
been
It's
fun.
been, it's been great chatting to you and Rachel.
Yeah, no kidding, huh? All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.